What up, guys? Joachim here. Joachim Justin Morgan, aka previously known as Joachim the Convert. And in this video, I want to kind of do a bit of an introduction regarding some videos that will be upcoming on the Western Rite and just the Western Rite of the Orthodox Church. First of all, this is not a habit. I'm actually wearing a hoodie. My wife bought me this. It has a Celtic cross on it. She knows that I really like a lot of things related to Celtic Christianity, Celtic, just from the writings of the church that are left, very reminiscent of reading the Desert Fathers when you read some of those Celtic writings. So I'm really into that. So she got me this hoodie because it's just a point of interest for me. And so I wanted to talk, though, about several aspects of the Western Rite and differences between the way that the West was Orthodox and what Christianity looked like during that time. And to set it up, I just kind of wanted to do an introductory video where I talked about some of those things and what exactly my interest in it is, because my family does not attend a Western Rite church on a regular basis. And to be honest, I really didn't even grow up in any rite at all. I didn't grow up in any type of Christian tradition. I was picked up as a child, several times a month and taken on a church. Well, I was going to say a church bus, but it wasn't even that because nobody else from my neighborhood would go to the church. So I was introduced to Christianity through that. I just had an interest in it. So I had an interest in several different religious points, and so it was mainly Pentecostalism, and that was kind of at least growing up, that was the biggest influence as far as Christianity goes, and what I came to know. But because I played music, I became heavily involved, not involved, but I would really only go to these churches if I was being paid or requested to play for something. But both Lutheran and Methodist churches stood out as like kind of the principal ones. Some Wesleyan. So there's several different Methodist churches. So I don't really know that much about all of them. I just knew there were Lutheran, Methodist, and some of them just were called Wesleyan churches. So I became familiar with those traditions because I was playing the music for them, not on a weekly basis, but just I was hired to come in for at least large or big services when they were had, sometimes wedding ceremonies and things like that. And I kind of became familiar with those. I think I played a couple times at like an Episcopalian church in a town where I'd gone to high school. So I had familiarity with various different Western traditions, Western Christianity, and that was my only real experience in following that. And I did not follow that in my daily life. I was not an adherent to those. So it wasn't until much later in life that I actually took an interest in that. So after I came to the Orthodox Church, though, I converted not because of the Easternness of the church or because I had any animosity or hatred towards the West or Westernism or anything like that. It just, I was looking for the church. It was the theology of the church, the continuity of the apostles until today. I at some point I recognized that I think it was Bishop Trifon, or not Bishop, I'm sorry, not Bishop, but Abbot Trifon, had made this point in an article that he had written that, I'm paraphrasing or interpreting and probably adding to what he said. So he set me along this line of thought, though. But there had to be a succession in the church. The breath that Christ gives to the apostles in the book of John, when it says that he goes and breathes on them and tells them to receive the Holy Ghost. And this outpouring that happens at Pentecost and the apostles themselves. You read in the scripture where they anoint people as episcopos or as bishops. In English, we translate that as bishop. And that term, episcopos, is actually in the Episcopalian church. That's where they get the word Episcopalian from. There is from the Greek word episkopos, or bishop. So I'm not an Episcopalian, but just interesting side note, that's where they get the term from. But so I recognized that there were these, apostolic lines of succession, and that what I was really looking for was to be part of those lines, part of those successions of the apostles. So that kind of really helped me personally to narrow the church down to there is the church that the apostles founded. That is the one that you can trust, that the gates of hell would not prevail against. So that really narrowed me down to the Catholic Church, to the Orthodox Church, and then also to the Anglican Church, or in America, many of those Anglican churches were at the time known as the Episcopalian churches as well. The Episcopalian Church would actually schism sometime after that from the Anglican Church. So today that would just be known as the Anglican Church. But so I really had some interest in all of those. I primarily was looking at the Orthodox Church. That was the one that I had been introduced to, and that was the one that I had kind of been researching. But along my way, as I was visiting the Orthodox Church, I did give consideration to these other churches. We actually went and visited an Anglican church where a close friend of mine was serving in some capacity. He was not really like a priest or a deacon, but he had some kind of like, he wasn't just a layperson as far as that church went. He had some service that he gave to the church on a weekly basis. So he invited us to come over there, and we actually really enjoyed it. But by the time I had visited, I had become fairly convinced that that was not the church that I was looking for. So I continued to look into the Catholic Church after that. But the biggest thing that stood out to me as I read the church fathers and as I read church canons and councils that had been held, and looked at the way that Celtic Christianity and the Celtic Church had looked and had their relationship to the Pope, I think, to me at least, it became very, very obvious that the Vatican I, Vatican II understanding of the Pope was not at all the way that the church of the first millennia had viewed the Pope. And I will be doing quite a few more videos using the text of a book called The Church and the Pope that recently came out on that topic in the future, but I need to give that some time to sit on and study a bit more of. But at least for my own personal nature, I began to see the church as exclusively existing in the Orthodox Church. So in coming to the Orthodox Church, though, I began to look through all of the Orthodox Church. And when I came to church, I would talk to people, and they would talk about, well, this is the Russian tradition, and this is what we follow here. And the church that I go to primarily, there's a mix, or at least at the time I started going, there was a mix of both Greeks, Russians, Serbians, Romanians. We had a pretty wide gamut. Today, still there's at least one Greek family, and then mostly Americans actually. But there's some Russians, Ukrainians, different groups from Orthodox countries that go there. And but what stood out to me with each of these was these people talking about, this is the tradition of what we do, and what comes from our family, and what comes from our country. And I thought, well, what about, my own heritage? What about, me? I only really had a vague idea of my own ancestry in general. I had reason before to look up very key parts of my family, but I really, as far as like my whole family went, I didn't even really know that much about it. I think somebody had told me before that the Morgan name was a Welsh name, and that the Morgans had come from Wales. But at the time, I didn't really know that much about Wales, or about the Morgan name, or the history of my own family. So I began to look into this because I thought, like, well, there was a period of time where the West was part of the Orthodox Church, and in the Orthodox Church we commemorate these saints. At least in the Russian Church they do. I think Russia gives a lot more precedence to Western saints. And as far as I know, I don't think like the Greek Church, I've never heard them mention or have much to do with like St. Patrick at all. Actually, I take that back, because this icon was painted on one of the monasteries in Greece. I'm not sure if it was Mount Athos, but it came from Greece. So you can find within the Greek within Greece, not the Greek Archdiocese of America, but in the country of Greece, which is under the Bishop of Athens or the Church of Greece, you can find some Western saints, and they do commemorate those. So I take that back. I repent. I apologize. But so St. Patrick obviously came from Ireland. He's from Wales, actually. And he was an apostle to the Irish people, converted the Irish people to the Orthodox faith. And that is a strong witness to the ecclesiology of the Orthodox Church. If you read those Celtic saints, in my opinion, they give strong witness to Orthodox ecclesiology, especially compared to Catholic, the ecclesiology of the Catholic Church. The Celtic saints, the Celtic church fathers, they kind of, they speak with a voice that, today the Orthodox Church would recognize, and that would somewhat be opposed to the modern Vatican I, Vatican II understanding of the Pope. So, these were all things that were floating around in my mind, floating around in my life, and that I was experiencing. So my main interest, though, was in the spirituality of those ancient saints, that ancient Celtic church. I wanted to know more about that. My mom, I think when I was a kid, had told me that her family at least was Irish. They were the Redmonds and the Qualities and, several others. I really, not that I don't believe my mom all the time, but my dad had told me like our family was Native American and all these other like weird things that I kind of suspected weren't actually true, but really didn't know that much about. But actually, I did one of those DNA tests, Ancestry.com or Ancestry test, and 0% Native American. So I was correct about that one. But the Irish actually popped up. That was one. So there was this mix of Scottish, English, Welsh, and Irish, and it was primarily those. There's a few other small stragglers down there, but the big ones that stood out that were more than like 1% were Scottish, Irish, English, and Welsh, with my name obviously being a Welsh name. So that was interesting because I had already been studying Celtic spirituality. I'd actually done videos on this channel related to Celtic spirituality and Celtic Christianity, the way that the Celtic Church prayed and things like that. That was a big point of interest for me. I wanted to know about that. Mostly because I had read some of the Desert Fathers, and I had read about this connection between the Celtic Fathers and the Desert Fathers, and similarities in like the beehive way that they made the cells that they lived in, and you saw that very different in Ireland and in Wales and throughout the British Isles than you did in the desert where the Desert Fathers lived. But they looked the same, but they were made with stone and things that would be native to the British Isles. So the Christianity that had been brought to the British Isles in the early centuries, though that was unique to that area. It was specific to that area. It was for those people. And this is one of the things where I began to see somewhat of a deficit in what we have in America, because we didn't get a faith that was brought here for this people. And some of that has to do with the ecclesiology of how the faith came here. I would say some groups did it better than others. One of the reasons I think that the Greek Archdiocese is primarily Greek people often is because that's how they came here. It was Greek immigrants coming to America, and they sent priests to serve those Greek immigrants. They were not here for the American people. They were not here to convert the American people, at least not early on. Now today, I mean, I would like to think, I visit other Greek churches at times. My son is in the Navy, and he, as far as he goes in his service, is he goes to a Greek church because that's what's available. He doesn't have access to a car. He's stuck on a base, and so the only church that he can really get to is a church of the Greek Archdiocese, and I think that's great. I have no problems with that. But when we visited there, there is a lot of the Greek language. This is going to be very difficult for an American blue-collar English-speaking person to come in and immediately be part of, or immediately understand and comprehend. So as far as bringing the Orthodox faith to the American people, that's going to be a difficult sell. That is going to be a barrier that the church is putting up between those people, and we don't. I don't know if we really offer the liturgy as an evangelical tool, but the witness of the church, of the Orthodox Church, is that we have always done the liturgy in the language of the people. So when we bring other languages in, this is a barrier that we are putting up between this and them. This is not the church of Saints Cyril and Methodius, who converted the Slavic people. The reason the Russian Orthodox Church is there today, and that the Slavic peoples more widely, whether they be Serbian, Russian, Ukrainian, or whatever, the Slavs, the reason that they ended up embracing the Orthodox faith is because the Orthodox faith was made available to them in their language. They developed chant styles that were specific to those areas. All these things came to be, and I've had people kind of tell me like, oh, well, that will come at some point in America. But if you go to Kenya today, there was a church started just a few decades ago under the Greek Archdiocese, and they already have that. I realize that it can come in the future in America, but there have been churches started long after America that already have that, whereas the Orthodox Church in America often still ends up, sporting these other ethnic identities that they want to maintain. So that's an issue. I think that is a problem. That is a point of pride. And that pride, in my opinion, is preventing the Orthodox Church from growing like it should be. We are the true faith. We have the true theology. We have the apostolic succession. We have the saints and the prayers of the saints. We have all the things that often, in my opinion, like on television, the Catholic Church portrays itself as, and I don't really believe that, to be honest. But, the Orthodox Church does have all of those things. We are that apostolic true faith, the faith that was inherited and passed down from the apostles, that is the Orthodox Church. When I look around, though, there are other churches like the Antiochian Church and the Russian Church. Both did quite a bit of effort and work to begin preaching and evangelizing the American people. And regardless of all our identities and our background, we are Americans, whether you're black, white, Asian, whether you're a Slav, or whether you're Western European, or whether you're Scandinavian, or whether you're German, or whatever. We are, if you've grown up in this country, you are an American, and it is a Western country. It is a colonized country from the British Isles. So we share the language of that country. So this is where, when I was introduced to the Western Rite and introduced to the Western prayers, the Western things, like even though I didn't grow up in the tradition, I did begin to see the commonality of these things and somewhat the importance of it. So somebody recently told me, and it was a very strange comment to me, because the thing that they said was that related to the Western Rite of the Orthodox Church, it was a Western person who was a convert to Eastern Orthodoxy. And they said that, as a Western person, there's no reason that I can't become Eastern and celebrate Eastern Christianity and Eastern traditions. And that's true. I know I don't have any issue with the statement itself, but to expect that you need to, or that's not the question to me. It's the wrong question. It's the wrong statement. It's the wrong frame of mind. The question is, why do you need to give up your own ethnicity, your own national identity, in order to become a Christian? That's a very strange thing. That's something that the church has never done before. That's not how, when the Apostle Paul brought the gospel to the people across Greece, across the Greek city-states, the Roman city-states. The message was not, you need to convert and become a Jew. That was actually the opposite. There was a council held in Acts 15. But I have a feeling if many of the Slavic and, not Slavic so much, but more the Greek and then Slavic, Serbian, Romanian. Some of the priests and people, if they had taken that same frame of mind, they would have told the people, yeah, you need to become Romanian, you need to become Greek. This is wrong. This is not the apostolic faith. That is not how the apostles approached people. They didn't make the people learn Hebrew. That was the liturgical language of Israel. It was the Hebrew of the time, the Hebrew at least of the first century. So they did it in the language of the people. They translated it into Greek, which is why we have it that way today. In the West, it was translated into Latin. So I think definitely the liturgy itself should in America be celebrated in English. And, even the terms, we have a service where we at least quarterly, we'll serve koliva. Well, this is a type of bread that's made as like a wheat offering. But, why are we using these Greek terms still to describe these things? Like even in an English-speaking parish, we still use lots of these like Greek and Russian terms. Like my parish is a mixture of those Greek and Russian terms that are set up. And to me, it just doesn't make any sense. It's creating barriers between Americans that, So there's this group of people that does come to the Orthodox Church in America. There's converts. My church has lots of converts. But it's people that can study their way into the faith. They kind of like approach the faith through an studious way of coming to the faith. But, and that's great for those people that have studied and can study their way to Christ. There's only one way. There's only one path, and that is Christ. But there's many parts of someone's life that draws them to Christ. Christ is in all things and working through all things. And so many people everywhere have many opportunities throughout their life to come to Christ through various avenues. And sadly, many of them are still ignored and rejected, but they're still there nonetheless. And for those people who can study their way into Christ, the church is an open avenue. They can learn to become Eastern, so to speak. But my message in general would be that why would that even be a barrier? We should not be making people become Eastern. The West was Orthodox for 1,000 years. And this is a quote from, I believe it's from St. John of Shanghai or St. John of San Francisco. He was a Russian, St. John Maximovich. So when he brought the Orthodox faith to the people of France, into Shanghai, he brought a form of Christianity, and he was perfectly fine with celebrating the Gallican Rite, which I think is in a lot of the Orthodox churches in France, if they speak French at least, they are either using French or some of them might even be using Latin. But so that is present there amongst those Western Rite churches in France anyway, still to this day. In America, at least in San Francisco, St. John of San Francisco continued this with discussing the Western Rite. And the quote from him was that never let anyone tell you that you have to become Eastern in order to become Orthodox. The Orthodox faith is the faith for all peoples. It's not the Eastern Orthodox Church. We usually characterize it that way because the patriarchs of the Orthodox Church are from the East, and that's a fine way if that's what you mean. But I have a feeling that many of my American brothers and sisters in the Orthodox Church characterize it not because our patriarchs are from the East, but because they have some kind of... it's almost like they're rebelling against their own Western tradition, and they want to become Eastern for that reason, or they want to become Eastern because it's exotic to them somehow, and they see it that way. But that can, I think, ostracize a lot of simple blue-collar people who deserve the faith just as much as somebody that studied their way to Christ. And when we do anything, in my opinion, in the church to ostracize someone from the church or from the faith or from being able to come to Christ, whether it be the way, the language that we use, the way that we present the liturgy, the way that we discuss the church, this is similar, in my opinion, to the book of James, where he says that, if a rich man comes into your, I think he says synagogue at that time, if a rich man comes into your, we'll say church, if the rich man comes into your church and you give him a place of preference, but to the poor man you say, sit back here and be in the back, or you give him a lowly place, then when we do this in the church, it's the same thing. It's the exact same principle. We are ostracizing people from the Orthodox Church through the use of these other avenues that I've talked about, these other barriers that we've set up. And we're doing the exact same thing that James condemned us for doing and told us not to do. So, I guess this is why, like, in my opinion, I start to read about the Western Rite. I don't go to a Western Rite church. I go to an Eastern Rite church, but I wish that, there was a Western Rite parish. That would be difficult because I love the people of my parish, and that's where my family is. So we're kind of planted there. So even if there was, I guess, a Western Rite church here, I probably wouldn't leave my church to go there exclusively. And that is, I guess, the problem that you have with that. But, 100 years from now, I have a feeling that the Western Rite in America, if we're still here in 100 years, will continue to grow, and that will, in my opinion, I think that there's a good chance that will continue to be the Orthodox faith of the West. That in Western countries like America, as Greek immigrants, as their grandchildren and great-grandchildren have now, like 5% Greek ethnicity left, they no longer see themselves as Greek. And it'll be the same for every nationality that's come here. They'll see themselves not as Greeks or as Slavs. They'll eventually just see themselves as Americans or some mixture of whatever these other people groups that they are. And it'll be the Orthodoxy, I hope, that continues to pervade their lives, and not a certain degree of ethnicity. So I don't think that any of those churches are opposed to Orthodoxy. I visited Mount Athos last summer, and I guess I still owe you guys some more videos on that, and pictures and discussion about my trip there. Obviously, I don't have anything against that. I just, the reason I'm making this video and the reason that I see the Western Rite as being important in America is because I want to see Americans embrace Orthodoxy. I want to see those Americans that will call upon Christ begin to recognize the Orthodox Church, because the Orthodox Church has much wisdom to save them from the heartache and the struggle that they are going to face throughout their lives through looking for Christ, for looking for the church and being unable to find it, and the church itself having put up barriers preventing them from being able to reach that. So, long video, I apologize. It's a topic I have a lot to say on, and I will continue to discuss various aspects of it in the future with probably myself and hopefully some visitors and guest speakers that I'll have on the channel to discuss it with. So you guys take it easy, and I'll talk to you in a video coming very soon.